there's a part of recovery that doesn't get talked about. Not because it's rare, but because it's hard to explain and even harder to sit with. It's the part that comes after the crisis, after the urgency, after the moment where getting sober feels necessary and obvious. It's the part where things aren't falling apart anymore, but they aren't coming together either. Nothing dramatic is happening, and that's the problem. Early on, recovery has shape. There are rules, there's structure, there's a sense of movement, forward or backward, but movement. Then one day, that fades. You're sober, you're showing up, you're doing what you're supposed to do, and still something feels off. This is the part no one prepares you for. The part where recovery becomes quiet. You wake up and nothing is wrong. But nothing feels particularly right either. You're not in danger. You're not in crisis. You're just here. And for a lot of people, that's more unsettling than chaos ever was. When I was using, my life was loud. There was urgency. There was drama. There was always something to react to. Recovery took that away. And what was left was stillness. Stillness sounds peaceful in theory. In practice, it can feel empty. It can feel like something is missing, even when nothing bad is happening. This is where people start wondering if sobriety was supposed to feel more rewarding. They think, I did the work, why doesn't this feel better? Or if this is it, why am I still uncomfortable? Those questions don't mean recovery isn't working. They mean you've reached the middle. The middle of recovery is where you stop reacting and start noticing. Noticing how you actually feel day to day. Noticing what your life looks like without constant stimulation. Noticing what's been waiting underneath the noise. That awareness doesn't come with fireworks. It comes with discomfort. The middle is where boredom shows up, not as laziness, but as unfamiliar quiet. It's where old patterns start knocking without the intensity they once had, where urges are less dramatic but more persistent. That subtlety is dangerous because it's easy to underestimate. This is a part where people say, I don't know what's wrong. I just don't feel connected. And instead of recognizing that as a normal phase, they assume something is missing. Sometimes the only thing missing is time. Real recovery doesn't constantly reassure you. It doesn't always reward you emotionally. Sometimes it just takes you to stay present long enough for a new way of living to take root. That takes patience most of us weren't taught. The part of recovery no one talks about is that it can feel anticlimactic. You expect transformation. You get maintenance. You expect relief. You get neutrality. And that can feel like failure if you weren't warned. But neutrality is not nothing. Neutrality is stability. It's the ground things grow from. In the middle of recovery, you're no longer driven by fear, but you're not yet guided by purpose. You're between identities, and that in between can feel unbearable if you don't know it's temporary. This is the part where staying becomes a choice rather than a reaction. There's no crisis forcing your hand, no emergency reminding you why you started. Just you deciding again not to leave. That decision doesn't feel heroic. It feels quiet. And quiet doesn't get celebrated. But quiet is where real recovery lives. Not in breakthroughs. Not in before and after stories. In ordinary days where you don't self-destruct. In evenings where you sit with yourself and don't disappear. In weeks where nothing changes and you don't panic. If you're in this part of recovery and wondering why it feels so flat, hear this. You're not stuck. You're stabilizing. Stability doesn't feel like joy at first. It feels like unfamiliar calm. An unfamiliar calm can feel boring, heavy, or even unsettling. But it's not empty. It's space. The part of recovery no one talks about is the part where nothing pulls you forward except your own commitment to stay. No adrenaline, No urgency, no fear, just integrity. If you're here in the quiet, unremarkable middle, you haven't missed anything. You're exactly where real recovery starts to deepen. Stay. Not because it feels good yet, but because this part of building, not because it feels good yet, but because this part is building something you'll recognize later. Truth brings light.